So how could that conversation go? Well, let's ask the front bench. Sabrina Grover, Melanie Paradis, and Carl Boulanger. Sabrina, the first, that first in-person meeting that they had some premiers basically singing Kumbaya. Do you think we're still there?
I think we've drifted from that hand-holding, hot chocolate drinking vibe that we had perhaps earlier this year. But I don't think that it's weakened that much. I do think that the premiers are still on side. I think what you're starting to see is a bit more regionality in the things that they're expressing, in the issues that they want to see on the table. They're also, coming to grips with the fiscal situation of the country and noticing that the budget is going to be a bit more like Hunger Games and they are going to have to be a bit more competitive. But I think premiers who are interested in actually running with these investments, things like the major projects, that they're actually going to take what investments have been put forward on the table and run with them and invest in them immediately, not wait on a 2 to 3 year rollout period, are the ones that are going to win in this. And I will say, as an Albertan, it is remarkable the cordial relationship that Mark Carney has maintained with Danielle Smith, right? For no major project to be on that list from Alberta, and for Danielle Smith today to say, we're actually still negotiating with Ottawa and we hope to see something successful out of the future, is phenomenal as an Albertan.
Yeah, Mel, how much does that shock you, especially when you consider that there has been a sprinkling of a number of these major projects that are going to that office?
Well, I have to think that Premier Smith knows that there's something coming around the corner for her. I think she must be holding her cards close to her chest, because I can't imagine that if there was actually nothing there, that she would be taking that approach. Look, the premiers across the board form a very effective opposition to the prime minister. They did with Trudeau. Towards the end, in his final years, they were incredibly effective at scrutinizing him and at making it very clear that they were dissatisfied with his leadership. Mark Carney has enjoyed a very different relationship, and I think that he, having seen what happened with Trudeau, knows that it's very important that he maintain strong relationships with the premiers. The sprinkling of projects across the country through the Major Projects Office has had, I think, some good regional impacts. But as you saw from the interview you did with Minister Lecce earlier, Ontario is still looking for a major investment in large-scale nuclear. As AI becomes much bigger, and as data centers need to be built across the country, these are incredibly energy intensive. And so we need more nuclear power in order to fuel that. And so I think it's very prudent for Minister Lecce, for Premier Ford, to be advocating for that kind of investment in Ontario.
So, Carl, does this keep up if the Prime Minister keeps up with showing them the money or showing them the support with these projects?
Well, so far, so good, I guess. And, the truth is, as the key thing for Prime Minister Carney and for the premiers is the relationship with the United States. Right now, it's kind of giving premiers some kind of cover. We are hurting, but it's because of the Americans and what's happening. And that's the responsibility of the federal government. So, but that will last only a time. And that's why some premiers are kind of pushing a little more and have their own ad campaign and, some back and forth on that. But, Mike, I don't expect much from that meeting, to be honest. There's not a lot of drama in a Zoom call, unless one of them shows up without their pants on. I don't expect we'll talk about this meeting next Friday.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? One of them may not show up with a
It's possible.
And hopefully we won't know, because that has happened, unfortunately, on Parliament Hill. But there's no good segue out of Carl, Sabrina. Like, twice now I'm trying, and it's just, I'm kidding. So in their letter, the premiers say Canada's relationship with the U.S., as Carl had mentioned, has changed significantly since their last meeting in July. How much do you think that conversation will be around specifically that subject? Because it has kind of been dormant lately.
Yeah, I think there's obviously big elements of the United States relationship that will be on the table. And I think what will be interesting is if the conversation can move towards how is Canada interacting outside of the White House. I think that it matters that a number of Democrats won in the elections in the most recent weeks. That's going to change how Republicans and Donald Trump engage domestically. And I think that it's important for Canadians and provinces to be aware of that so that they can have, a reciprocal relationship with states where they think that changes might happen. I think more than the Canada-U.S. piece, though, right now, it may be Canada-China, specifically when it comes to kind of the trade-off between EVs and canola. And that is not just an industry call, but it's also a regional call. And so I think that that relationship is going to be front and center as part of this conversation.
Mel, how much does that loom? And to Sabrina's point, is that a bigger issue with China or even India now?
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things that we know about this Prime Minister's office is we haven't been seeing the readouts for a lot of the calls that he's been having with the United States. And so it's possible that he'll be providing an update to the premiers about how those conversations are going, if they are at all. On India and China, I believe there's a trade, there's a trip coming up in January or February that the Canadian government is leading to India. And that would create a really great opportunity for businesses across Canada, for provinces to attend that, to have conversations around bringing investment from India into Canada, and conversely, doing more business in India with Canadian companies. So those trade missions, that's the word I was looking for. Those trade missions are quite valuable, and there is one in the calendar already. So I think that there may be some conversations around that and which regional industries need to be front and center.
Carl, does the Prime Minister buy a little more time of this honeymoon if he does continue to include them not only on these calls, but on those trade missions?
Relationship is so important in politics, and that's the key. If you want to keep them on side, you got to keep talking to them. If you ignore them, then they'll stew in their own, recrimination against the government. And so I think it's smart to keep the lines of communication open, to talk to them as often as they can. Maybe not as a group, but certainly to keep the relationship going.
Yeah, and certainly something to learn from all relationships with the Prime Minister and Danielle Smith as how we started this, because as Sabrina pointed out, it's never been so good, seemingly. Okay, that's it for our Friday Front Bench. Thanks to Sabrina Grover, Melanie Paradis, and Carl Belanger.